Alright, this is the video lesson for 11-3 part 2. These are our last four examples and then a story problem. In these last four examples you're actually going to see one new step involved in solving these, and we'll get to that here very shortly. So let's go ahead and go through our steps here in solving this. This is number 7. I'm going to first ask myself, is the radical that contains the variable isolated? And it sure is. It's the only thing on the right side is the radical with the variable. So it's all by itself, so my next step says to square both sides. Squaring the left side now gives me x squared, and squaring the right side gives me 6 minus x. Now, notice here that you are going to end up with a trinomial here because you have three different terms. So you're going to want to do what we've always done with these trinomials and make this equal to 0 by adding x to both sides. I get x squared plus x equals 6, and then subtract 6 to both sides. And then I have x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. And then you just have to remember how to solve a quadratic like this. So you could solve this using the quadratic formula. We all know how to use the quadratic formula. We did that in the last chapter. But if there's an easier way to go about this, I would go about it, maybe an easier way, and in this case I think there is an easier way, which is to factor negative 6 to give you a positive 1. That would be negative 2 and positive 3. And since this is a 1x squared, you can use the shortcut and just say that the answer, or the factored form, is x minus 2 times x plus 3 equals 0. Giving you the two answers, x equals positive 2 and x equals negative 3 when you set them both equal to 0 and solve. Again, a step I kind of skipped, but again, you've done this so many times you should know that this is how you solve it. You set them both equal to 0 and you solve. So that's the new kind of step, is that on some of them, if they end up with an x squared, you're going to have to factor them or use the quadratic formula. And in this case, you're still going to have to check. So I'm going to come up here and just write up the problem, do my check, where I'm going to plug in, let's say, negative 3 first. So I'm going to say negative 3 equals the square root of 6 minus negative 3. So negative 3 equals the square root of 9, because minus minus is a plus, and the square root of 9 is 3, and 3 does not equal negative 3, so the answer negative 3 gets thrown out. That's an extraneous, or an extraneous solution, so it's not a real solution, so it doesn't work. Then I go up here and I check 2. And I say 2 equals the square root of 6 minus 2. 2 equals the square root of 4. So yeah, 2 does equal 2. So the answer of 2 is correct. That's fine. Alright, why don't you go ahead and try number 8 here on your own. Pause the video, give it a shot. It's pretty much the exact same as number 7 was. Alright, here we go. Variable is isolated, or the radical is isolated, so I'm going to square both sides. I'm going to get 5x minus 6 equals x squared. I want to try to keep a positive x squared, so I'm going to move both of these terms over here, which changes their signs. So I'm going to have x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. I think this one will factor. Factors of 6 that give me -5 would be -6 and +1. And again, since it's a 1x squared, I can use my shortcut and say, wait, nope, that's not right. +6 or -6 and +1 is not going to work because it's a +6. So let's go back and think about another one. How about -2 and -3? That'll work. -2 and -3 will make +6. -2 and -3 will make -5. So I'm going to have x minus 2 times x minus 3 equals 0. Means x is going to equal 2 and x is going to equal 3, maybe. That's if both check out. So I go here to check. I see the square root of 5 times 2 minus 6 equals 2. So that's the square root of 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is 4, so square root of 4 equals 2. That is correct. So 2 works. And then I check 3. Square root of 5 times 3 minus 6 equals 3. Square root of 15 minus 6 equals 3. Square root of 9 equals 3. So that checks out. So both answers work here. Alright, so continuing on, 2 more problems. Pause it, try them out if you want, and then check. I will tell you that in number 9, you are going to have to FOIL the right-hand side, then get everything together, and then factor. So pause if you need to. Alright, here we go. Square left side, square the right side. It's going to give me x plus 1 equals, and then like I said, when I square the right side, it's actually going to be x minus 1 times another x minus 1. So I'm going to get x squared minus 1x minus 1x plus 1. So I subtract x with those, I subtract 1 with that. So I get 0 equals x squared minus 3x. And then there's plus 0, so just x squared minus 3x. Again, I like to write that with the 0 at the end, so x squared minus 3x equals 0. And so now you got to remember how to factor to solve this one. This one's actually an easier factor problem because you just take out an x and you're left with x minus 3. Meaning our 2 answers are x equals 0 and x equals 3 when you set them both to 0. Again, going to check here. Square root of 0 plus 1 equals 0 minus 1. Square root of 1 equals -1. Nope, that's not going to work. So the 0 answer gets thrown out. And then let's check the 3. Square root of 3 plus 1 equals 3 minus 1. That's square root of 4 equals 2. That does work, so the answer of x equals 3 is correct. Alright, last problem. Everything's the exact same here on the last problem except that first step, the radical is not isolated, so you need to isolate the radical by subtracting that 4 on both sides. Giving you the new equation, square root of m minus 2 equals m minus 4. And now it's pretty much the same as the last problem. I'm going to square the left side, square the right side. So I'm going to get m minus 2 equals, now when I square this side over here, I'm going to go ahead and use a shortcut. I'm going to say m squared minus 8m plus 16. And again, that's using my shortcut on knowing how to square a binomial. If you don't remember the shortcut, you simply have to FOIL it. I'm going to subtract m on both sides. I'm also going to add 2 on both sides. And I'm going to flip my 0 around. So I have m squared minus 9m plus 18 equals 0. This one factors also. Factors of 18 that give you 9, or that give you negative 9, are negative 3 and negative 6. So I've got m minus 3 times m minus 6 equals 0. So m equals 3 and m equals 6. Checking them. 4 plus the square root of 3 minus 2 equals 3. 4 plus the square root of 1 equals 3. 4 plus 1 equals 3. Nope, that's not going to work, so 3 gets thrown out. And then we check 4 plus the square root of 6 minus 2 equals 6. 4 plus the square root of 4 equals 6. 4 plus 2 equals 6. That does work, so the only answer is m equals 6. Alright, very good. That is solving radical expressions. So let's move on to a story problem. Alright, story problem says the free fall equation is t equals the square root of h divided by 4, the time t in seconds that it takes an object to fall h feet. So here's our problem. 2 objects are dropped simultaneously. The first object reaches the ground in 2.5 seconds, and the second object reaches the ground 1.5 seconds later. From what heights were the objects dropped? So this actually means we're setting up 2 problems. I have the first object and I have the second object. It says the first object reaches the ground in 2.5 seconds. So the t is 2.5, and that equals the square root of h divided by 4. And the second object, and this is an important part, reaches the ground 1.5 seconds later. So you're not going to say 1.5 equals, you're actually going to say 4 equals. Because 1.5 seconds after 2.5 is 4. So at this point, pretty simple setup, pretty simple solve problem. Both equations, you're going to have to isolate the radical. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4 so that cancels. So 4 times 2.5 is 10 equals the square root of h. And now I square both sides. So I end up with 100 equals h, means that the height was 100 feet. Now, you really should probably check this, but since this is a story problem, it's not like an object that falls and hits the ground 2.5 seconds later. It's not like you're going to throw out the height that it was at. But I'm just going to mentally check this real quick. If you'd plug 100 in for h, you know the square root of 100 is 10, and 10 divided by 4 is 2.5, so that does make sense. So the height was 100 feet for the first object. Second object, same process. We're going to multiply both sides by 4. So we're going to have 16 equals the square root of h. I'm going to then square both sides, which gives me 256 equals h. So again, the height was 256 feet for the second object. And again, you can plug that in kind of mentally and solve. Square root of 256 is 16. 16 divided by 4 is 4. So it does make sense. So pretty simple story problems all throughout this chapter 11 or this unit 11. This section's not too hard. You just got to remember how to factor a little bit and how to FOIL, and it shouldn't be too difficult. So go ahead and start on the homework now. And this was the last section of the unit.